Why don't we get started? Welcome. Welcome to all of those of you who are here in this congenial spot, thanks to the University of Florida International Center. We are streaming online, so welcome to all of you. Welcome to all of you who are out there online as well. We welcome you to this open forum discussion, Hopes and Fears in International Relations. I need to thank some of the people who have made this possible. First of all, I want to thank the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany that has been cooperating with us for the past few years in organizing a number of different kinds of events, including this one. I'd like to thank the generous support of the University of Florida International Center that has provided this space for us to use today. I'd like to also thank my own Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures that has made this open forum discussion possible. The discussion is also being carried to its online audience via the Sustainable Online Network for Global Cultural Studies. And its recording will also be accessible on the SONGS website. I'd like to start with a little bit of background and not take too much time so that we can get right into question and answer and discussion. The Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany has been supporting projects in recent years in connection to its Campus Weeks initiatives, and some of you may remember Campus Weeks initiatives in which you've been involved. If not, we have some coming up in the fall, so you may yet have a chance to do that. This year, as part of its Deutschlandjahr, or Germany Year initiative, the German Ministry of Defense, in coordination with the German Embassy, has also become involved in these initiatives and is participating with the aim of fostering our transatlantic relationship by engaging in discussions such as this one that we have planned for today. Our German friends kindly offered the involvement of groups of German officers with the rank of captain to be involved in open forum discussions for the exchange of ideas. Our guests today are Captains Christian Brinkmann and Karl Philipp Jürgens. Captain Brinkmann and Jürgens, welcome to the University of Florida. Thank you very much for coming. I wanted to give us, so Hopes and Fears in International Relations and Open Forum Discussion, that's a broad field, right? And I wanted to give us a starting point or point of orientation, and then start maybe focusing a little bit more, and then we'll turn things loose. The starting point for this discussion is the Western liberal democratic world order put in place at the end of World War II, based on strong transatlantic alliances among nations aspiring to be politically free and economically prosperous and interconnected by these values, rather than continuously separated and traumatized by the ravages of war, as had been the case in Europe for centuries. I'm a cultural historian by trade, so I'm speaking here on the basis of my own professional formation. The United Nations, NATO, and the European Union all grew out of and are connected in different ways to these shared aspirations. I'm going to click to a slide. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was generally seen as an affirmation of liberal democratic values and their associated political and economic aspirations. And you can see on the basis of this slide, these are three of the events that we have had here at the University of Florida involving University of Florida students since 2009, and we have one coming up, you can see, in 2019. Our focal point is the fall of the Berlin Wall and what has happened since then, but this provides us with a let's say, a focal point for the study, for the study and for the discussion of these aspirations of this liberal world order that has been in place since the end of World War II, pretty much. I feel somehow as a faculty, maybe getting on just a little bit. I'm into my 60s. I feel extremely fortunate myself personally to have lived during a period of time in this country when sure, there were bad moments, there were fears, there was Vietnam, there were terrible things that happened, but basically we had nothing approaching the cataclysms of the first part of the 20th century. And I think the reasons for that was these agencies that were put in place to try to make sure that such things would never happen again. That was the idea. I still remember growing up sort of under the shadow of mad, mutually assured destruction during the Cold War, when everybody sort of knew that if the war started, this was not going to end up. This was going to be mad, right? But somehow I still remember drills in my grade school where I had to take shelter under my desk, as if somehow that was going to make any difference, but there was just kind of this need to be prepared. In any event, my lifetime, that's as bad as it got for me. Otherwise, I've lived my whole life, thank you, very much somehow indebted to this order that was put in place, and I feel like I owe something to it. And have been fortunate to have lived my life during that time, and I want to see it extended, frankly. This is my perspective, and I want to stop talking now, and I want to let our guests begin speaking from very different perspectives, and I want to let you all begin speaking from different perspectives and asking questions and comments. So with no further ado, I'll pass the mic along to her.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the possibility to talk about you. And first of all, I want to introduce myself. Captain Christine Brinkmann, 31 years old, and I was born in the eastern part of Germany, and for 12 years I live in the west part of Germany, and I work there. I have been joined the armed forces in 2007, and my branch is the MBC Defense. But for 6 years I'm stationed by the mountaineers as mountain infantry, and I'm studied pedagogies in Munich, in Bavarian, and for 3 years I'm a news information officer. That means to talk about pupils, teachers, trainee teachers, about the German Armed Forces, the tasks of the German Armed Forces, the alliance. That means the youth information officer. To the topic of the Berlin Wall, I was 1 year old when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and for my generation it's not a difference between East and West in Germany. The imagination from a divided Germany is so far away from me. It's only from the history books I know this time. But I think the memory of this time and the unification is very, very important for us in Germany. And we have the freedom and the security that's not be taken for granted. And today it's a high pressure on our world order. And sometimes we're breaking up into puzzle pieces, and I'm convinced that the formative power of the US and the Europeans together in NATO have a greater potential as unilateral measures. And personally for me, NATO means experience from my point of view. In my trainee branch of the NBC Defense, I was in Missouri and I trained with the specialists from the NBC Defense, and I can train with your soldiers and under real conditions, what not allowed in Germany, and you're a very high professional. And of the other side, we are a good CBRN tank, and you rent the German tank, the US soldiers, and that means NATO for me. We work together. That's my point of view.
Yeah, hello. From my point, I'm Captain Karl Philipp Jürgens. I'm really pleased to see so many interested faces here in this small room. I'm 33 years old, so I'm roughly older than Christine is. I'm from the eastern part of Germany too. I worked for 6 years during my army time in the western part, and now I'm back in the eastern part of Germany. But maybe I can open that up a little bit, not just these walls, the border wall. I lived in the eastern parts of Germany, and there we have a border town called Frankfurt. And when I was a little, 14 years old, 15 years old, I used to go to Poland, party there, buy some drinks, buy some cigarettes, you know, and I have to use a passport to cross the border. It was normal yesterday, or in this time and age was normal, but today it's not normal anymore. I took a stroll with my son. I have two little sons, and we crossed the border to Poland without recognizing, because there was no fence, no nothing anymore, and we didn't have an ID for him. So we went back as fast as we can, but there was no problem, you know. You can just cross these borders. And Christine already told you a little bit about NATO, and this is for me to step that up. It's the European Union, you know. We get rid of borders, we get rid of the Berlin Wall, and after that we get rid of nearly all borders within the European Union. But to do so, we have to strengthen our security within that. We have to work together. And maybe if you want, if you have some questions, we can talk about this in a few moments, about how the European Union will do this, what kind of ideas we share, what kind of values we share. But now, at this point, I'm just open for questions. I hope you have a lot of questions, and we'll hand the mic back to our professor. He will be the moderator for the next. So it's up to you now.
So today, I know we had lots of questions. We've already visited multiple classes along the way, and people have already had a chance to think about different topics. Yes, get started.
So, in the 21st century, we're seeing a greater presence in Africa, both old and new, to develop it, whether it be through healthcare or improving access to opportunity. And we're seeing a greater presence from countries like China and Russia as well, in addition to the United States. And these countries each have different perspectives and political systems. How do you see, what's the discussion on, like, maybe whose territory is it to develop, or whose countries is it to kind of trust, or to gain the trust of? Because there has to be some kind of conflict there that people are discussing.
In terms of like spheres of influence or something?
Yes, spheres of influence.
So I guess the question is in this globalized situation in which we find ourselves, what are the new rules of play, so to speak?
Yeah, anyway.
That's a tough question to start with, but I will try my best to give you an answer. First of all, to the Africa question, I think Africa belongs to Africa. Quite simple. Yeah, these are independent states, but these are young states. We got the Second World War, and after that, a lot of these former colonies, European colonies, gather their liberty, gather their freedom, and that's important for them. But they need time. They just need time. They need a good economy. They need an approach to step up, to be a state. You know, if you compare that to Germany or even to the United States, it took us time too to become a state. You got a greater war within the Civil War, of course, you know about that, and even Germany took nearly 1,000 years to get the borders we have now at the moment. So it takes time. It takes time for them to cooperate. There are a lot of interest in there, of course, because Africa is a rich continent. You have a lot of resources there. But from the European perspective, from the German perspective, we don't think Africa belongs to us anymore. And never really did. We get smaller colonies, but we have to lose or to give them to the people after the First World War. To the second question, I think that's the question of the day. That's the biggest question ever. What are the rules? What do we do? I just didn't mention it. I studied international law in Germany, and international law is easy because there's really nothing in books about that. International law is how to do it. Just you do it the way you do it. It's quite hard and it's quite easy. You know, it's common law. You just follow it without having a book or something you can look it up to. So it's up to the states, the different, not the US states, all the states in the world, to deal with these problems. And I think, and this is the topic of today, there might be changes because of geopolitics, because of social problems within the societies. You have them, we have them in Europe too. There will be change, but in which way, in which direction, I cannot say at the moment. We hope, as Germany, that some of the alliance will strengthen, will keep up with that. But maybe they have to change, they have to adapt to the situation at the moment.
I want to add, for me are the rules, the common values that we have in the NATO together. That's for me the rules, the common values, democracy, human rights. That's what I add.
Does it cover the question a little bit? Or?
I think what I was looking for was just like a discussion on it, because it is such a newer topic, and something that hasn't been discussed too much. And so using human rights and diplomacy and democracy to guide future development, perhaps. And I see, opposing sides from Russia and China as well to that conversation. But thank you.
You're welcome.
In the wake of the increased threat of military action from states such as Russia, certainly in Crimea, whether or not it was officially recognized by the government, could you speak more to the importance of military exercises and cooperation between NATO countries?
Exercises are very, very important, and the relationship between the US soldiers and Germany are very good. For example, last year the big NATO exercise 2018 in Norway. We worked together, the unit where I'm stationed, the mountain infantries, worked together with the Americans, and the Americans flight for us, and we cooperate very, very close together. And I think the cooperation is very important, and the relationship between the US soldiers in exercises and in missions are very, very good at the moment.
And maybe I can add, we had a kind of turnaround in the German security policy. For the last couple of years, 15 years, it was mainly the pillar to fight against terrorism, to keep it easy, to fight terrorism. And at the moment, because of these points you already mentioned, we strengthened our second pillar a lot. This is the normal defense security system, defending the borders, defending the alliances. And therefore, we have to do these training courses. We trained in Norway. Norway is a cold country, so why? Maybe you have an idea about that. So we do that to strengthen these alliances on both pillars we have in Germany at the moment. So.
What issue or issues do you think are the most important in the future looming ahead for Americans and Germans to work together?
That's a tough one too, but it's great. No easy questions. The most important thing from my perspective is values. We talked about it earlier. We can talk about money. We can talk about economy. That's okay. You can have a great economy talk with Russia. You can have a great one with China too. But when we talk about values, how we want to live, how we want to cope together. We talked about this in all the classes today. This is what we should share and what we share within NATO, within European Union, which is, from my perspective, the most important thing we have to keep up with. We shouldn't separate, or we shouldn't let us separate because of our common values we have. We want to live the way we live, the liberty, the freedom we have. We just regained after 30 years Berlin Wall, Eastern Germany. Yeah, so we want to have that, and we have to fight for that. From my perspective. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. From my. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Of course.
It sounds like what you're talking. It sounds like you feel like NATO and these international alliances are being threatened by something, social ideals or values that are perhaps like pushing against the idea of these alliances.
We talked about it, yeah, and I think there are questions raised we didn't ask 10 years ago, and we have to find good answers for these questions, not just for the alliances and for the politicians, but for the people. You know, in Germany, for example, Germany has the longest peace period ever experienced during the last 70, 80 years after World War II. Thanks for that, by the way. Yeah, and so there is no real threat for the people on the streets. So why do we spend so much money for our military? That's a huge question in Germany too. We have old schools, we have infrastructural problems, we have a lot of things to do. You too, I think. But we're spending the second biggest amount of our money for the military, about 42 billion euros a year. So why do we do so? We have to explain it to the people, and if we forgot about them, if we just didn't keep up with their ideas, then it's hard. Then the values are asked. Then the reason is asked why we should stay in NATO or not, and therefore we have to find good answers, I think.
That's the point what I mentioned. The memories are so important. We shared a lot of historical moments with you, and we take the security and the freedom to be take for granted, and that's the point. We have to justify why we raise our expenditure of the defense, and why we have to explain it to our population.
Questions that are being raised, so those are good things, and it's just finding the answers is the issue, perhaps?
No, from my point. I don't think finding the answers is the problem, because these are easy. Just look around. This is the answer. Yeah, we are here. We are German guys, you're American guys, or whatever. Yeah, different races, different sexes. This is totally fine for us. This is the answer. The answer is quite easy, but there are questions. And there are people who try to answer these questions for their own benefit. If you look in Europe, we have a lot of different new parties popping up to collect the angry people, the frightened people, just collecting them, giving them more questions and no answers at all. In Germany, for example, we have parties. From my perspective, they do not have any answer. They just have more questions and more and more and more, and they are collecting the people. And these people don't have answers too, but questions raised. And we are the ones, we have to, in every kind of discussions, in a supermarket, whatsoever, we have to step up for these values we have and discuss about that. That's from my point of view, from my perspective. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so I'll bring it up. We have a problem in common, Americans and Europeans. We have many refugees coming from these poor countries. We, South America, Mexico, you guys across the Mediterranean to Italy, and then there are all these arguments where to put all these people. Well, we only keep so many, then we pass them on or we put them in camps. Okay, so what role, if any, is the Bundeswehr playing in all of this to protect the poor, the sometimes forgotten people who want to just a better life in Germany or in any other European country or in the US. Can the military be part of it? Besides protecting the border and not letting those people in.
All in Germany, it's a political decision, not a military thing. We don't use the military in this issue of migration. It's only a political issue, and I think, our politicals have to decide this because of our history, and we can go with this challenge only together in Europe, and that's mean Europe. We shared our values and solve this problem together in Europe, but it's political.
Is it enough for you, or maybe I can?
No, it's not enough.
Okay.
Do you have
I hope so.
Do you have any ships in the Mediterranean
Not
to
at the
pick
moment.
up all the people who are drowning there, falling off their little boats?
We got two bigger missions. One wasn't a mission, if you put it on the stress, but two missions. First of all, the army can be used within Germany, just in this case, if there is an emergency somehow. And in this case, during 2014 and 15, there were a lot of soldiers, a lot of barracks opened for refugees. So we supported our government by solving this just the people. It's not a problem. It's hard to talk. It's not a problem. These are people, was a lot of people. So we have to keep up our German bureaucracy with them. It was tough for them, and so we used the soldiers. On the one hand, and on the other hand, yes, the German Bundesmarine, our boats, our navy, they had a task in the Mediterranean Sea, but it wasn't seeking refugees. The main task was seeking the guys the smugglers from the human traffickers. That was the main task. But, and that's more or less common, I think, if you are on open water as a ship and someone seeks help during open water, then you have to help them, of course. Yeah. And the problem is the human trafficker, they know about that and they use it. These poor guys, they got a boat which makes maybe four nautical miles or 5, that's it, then it sinks. And one guy got a microphone or walkie-talkie or somehow, call these numbers and then someone will pick you up. So that's not okay, but that's the way it is. So therefore, the Bundesmarine also collected a lot of refugees from the Mediterranean Sea, but it wasn't the main task. Yeah, and the rest is like Chrissy said. It's not our task. It's a political decision what we have to do and what we don't have to do. Sorry.
I'd like to just make a quick message to the online audience. You can also ask questions if you'd like. I believe there's a question mark, and you just sort of hit the question mark and type it in, and then I will get your question. So let's proceed here then.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I am Murad Abu Zikri. I am here for a scholarship. I have been here for 2 months now. I came from Libya. So, what the question that I have, or what attracted me to ask the lady right there, raised a very good, important point for me, and I just try to link the ideas. You know, during the uprising in Libya during the uprising in Libya in 2011, when we struggled to end the dictatorship of Gaddafi's regime, we got support from all the Western countries, but Germany was hesitated to give a clear support to our struggle against the dictatorship regime. And in Libya, we were upset from Germany. We were fighting for our freedom, for a democratic state, for better lives for the Libyans. But this is the first question. I don't know why Germany at that time hesitated to support the Libyan politically, I mean, not military, politically. This is the question, why? The other thing, the lady they are talking about the immigration and the migrants, she's right, completely right. People came from the African countries to Europe to searching for another opportunity to have a happy life, although their countries are rich countries. So here, why don't Germany take an action with the other European countries, not economically? I mean, we have a dictatorship regimes all around in the Africa. So the problem with the Africa, not the resources. We have the resources, but we have a very bad political regimes. So why don't Germany and other European countries help the Africans to get their freedom, to get a democratic state in order to get used to their resources, to have a better life, instead of, as the lady said, welcoming them and putting them in campus and you don't know where to send them. So these are my 2 points of view. Your support to Libya wasn't that the one we accepted from Germany, and the other thing, Africans need is help to get free and democratic states in order to get benefit from the resources that they have in their countries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the question. I don't like to disappoint you at this point, but the question you are asking are good questions and important questions, but these are political questions. What should I say about that? You know, we as the German armed forces, as the military, we are the ones who have to do it, but not the ones who decide about that. There was a huge discussion within the German government about the Libyan stuff. Yeah, what to do, how to deal with that, and so far as I remembered, we did a lot. But we didn't participate in the attacks or in the no-fly zone over Libya. But we did a lot. I can't give you direct numbers and figures about that. And according to the second question, from my point of view, you can't bring statesmanship or state to a country. Let me just switch from Africa to Afghanistan, just to explain my point. We tried that in Afghanistan, 17 years now, with a lot of money, with a lot of workforce, with a lot of guys fighting there, dying there, to be precise, to rebuild a state. And this Afghanistan, they will celebrate their 100 years anniversary this year. So it's also a young state. But in Africa, you have a lot of young states. And they still have to figure out what to do. Who do you support? Yeah, we have the same question in Syria and in Iraq, older states. Who do you support? What do you think? Are we the ones to decide who is the good guy and who's the bad guy? I know this sounds a little bit hard, but from my personal perspective, sometimes in clear lines, with clear borders, the states have to figure that out for themselves. If there are no war crimes against humanitarian problems and so on, but to a certain level they have to figure that out for themselves. We can't do that because we are not in the position to decide at this point. I hope you understand what I mean. Yeah. We can discuss that, of course. What do you think about that? It's a hard question. It's a good question. Yeah. Is there something to add? No. Yes.
Are happening in Afghan and everywhere that we tried to take on a dictatorship and insert a democracy, and it didn't really work too well. It's like, all right, you guys can vote, but there was so much internal problems that it just didn't really work out. Is that how you're talking about it needs to happen from within the country? I guess I just was wanting you to expand on that because I wasn't sure what you meant.
Yes, more or less. You can't. I'm trying to find a good example for that. If you want to build a car, you can't build a car by just buying the parts and just leave them there. You have to connect everything. Every single dot, every single cable, every single tire, everything you have to connect so you got a drivable car. If you have enough manpower, there will be wheels on some metal, but it's not a car. So it won't drive, it breaks down every couple of miles. So that's the problem. And maybe we've been too ambitious in the early 2000s. We saw, it's Germany too, we thought we can do this in a small amount of time, creating a state. But the lesson of today is no, it's not possible. Maybe the task was too big. We should create a security environment. That's important. And then the rest, they have to figure out for themselves. We will see. We will support, of course. You guys, it's the same in Germany. You guys provided us a safe spot, a safe security after the Nazi dictatorship in Germany. And you gave us starting points for an economy, the Marshall Plan. You've heard about that, of course, and the airlift, of course, during the closing of Western Berlin, the blockade there. But after that, Germany has to figure it out for themselves somehow, and we did it, step over step over step over step. It took 40 years. Then we opened the border. And then we have a reliable ally within all the systems. You and we know each other. We can fight together. We can talk together. That's the way, maybe, and not the way. If you guys just dictated to us what we have to do after Second World War, I personally didn't think it would have been so great. It is today. The relationship and Germany.
So back to something you mentioned earlier, so how in 2014, 2015, you said that the military helped provide aid to refugees coming into the country. With the exit of Angela Merkel and the possibility of a more extremist party taking power, do you fear that the military might have to take action against immigration with the anti-immigration rhetoric happening all throughout Europe, like has also kind of happened in the U.S.?
No. Clear answer, no. Because of our history, because of the lessons learned from Second World War, we have really, really strict laws according to the use of the military. So we are not allowed to do anything within our own borders, except there is a huge catastrophe. But this one needs to be really huge. You know, if there's a terror attack, it's not huge enough. So then we get this during floods, for example. Then we use the military within Germany, and all the other is not part. We do not do that. Our border patrol is not part of the military. Our police forces are not part of the military. They do this stuff. We have secret services. We have the police forces, federal police forces, and they do this. It's not our job. Totally not. Except during war times, of course, to protect the border. But that's an exception. We don't talk about war times. Yeah.
As you mentioned before, something that's sort of coming more into general discussions, especially here as we approach our 2020 elections, is the issues that climate change is causing to legitimate national security. Are there similar discussions in Germany? Does the military view climate change as a threat to national security? Are you taking actions to prevent that? Are there links between climate? In your perspective, are there links between climate change and the refugee crisis in this action?
Yes.
Answer yes. Maybe just extend that a little bit. Chrissy always mentioned we are youth information officers, so we talk to young pupils in classes, and I always try to inform them that the main reason for everything is how the world is shaped, and if we change the shape of the world by the climate, we will have more migrants, of course. If you can't live there anymore, you have to go where you can live. That's normal. So, of course, I think climate change has a big impact on security policy on this, and you can even rise it up. We will have we have border conflicts in the northern parts of the world, in the Arctic, because we talk about who's in charge of doing the exploration of the ground there, Russia or Denmark or the United States or even Canada. So we have this already. We have climate change wars or climate change discussions during security policy, and everyone is sure that we will talk about these 10, 15 years in advance, all of us. That's why our pupils are. Have you heard about? We have Fridays for Future in Europe. Have you heard that? No. All our students or pupils, they just don't go to school on Friday. They're just demonstrating, protesting for climate change. There was a great Danish, I think Danish girl, and she started that. She's just 16 years old. Greta Thunberg, it's her name. Maybe you can look her up. Awesome. They step up. That's their plan. So.
I'm sort of on that note, like here in the U.S., there's a lot of discussion about automation and what that might do going forward. I'm just wondering if we can get a European or German perspective on that, like what sort of discussions are happening in Germany, in the European Union, because obviously the situation is different in Germany. You have things like universal health care already there. Just wondering like how that discussion is happening.
I'm sorry. So what do you mean exactly? Automation of what? Of cars or of?
Yeah, robots and AI.
That's a tough one. There is no real discussion at the moment, but I think that's because we are always 2 to 5 years after you. So in your development from the US to 2 to 5 years. So it will be, but it isn't at the moment. So we don't have Tesla cars. No big deal because really no one has them. We have these small robots. My lieutenant colonel, not this, the other one, told me he has a robot for cleaning his house, and the dogs are frightened of this machine. But that's not the answer for your question, of course. But there's no real discussion from my perspective at the moment. And even in the military, we got a little discussion about droning, about using IVs and so on, but not so. No, sorry. Yeah.
With your perspective from the German military, is there something that you wish more people around the world, in Europe and America, knew that they don't experience because of their perhaps occupation?
Yes. So you're on the ROTC program, I already know, and as a soldier, we get to know how bad life can be. No sleep, no food, no shelter. Superiors who are not so really happy at the moment and express themselves by voice, loud, intense. You know what I mean. This is an experience I got during my army time. Then I think, especially for the Western world, for you, for the European guys, that would be a great experience. Yeah, to just know how awesome our life is at the moment. We all get up in the morning, then there's a warm hot shower waiting for us as long as we want. Then there's a smartphone and someone is making something to eat, or even if you have to do it on your own, it's up to you, but you can eat whatever you want. Then you just go around and that's your day. You can do a little bit more and a little bit less, but that's your day. No one is beating you, no one is shooting at you. That everything is fine. That would be the first big thing. And maybe the second thing from my perspective, and then I will stop. Chrissy can step in. Social service in total. Do you want to mention that? Then no? Social service, just doing something for the others. We talked about it, Professor. At the moment, from my perspective, every one of you is a highly functional individual. You know, you do what you want. You are super special. I think in the United States you call them snowflakes, special snowflakes. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's a little bit exaggerated, but this is the time and age we're doing this. There's no community anymore, especially in Europe. Everyone's just closing his doors, and we do not do anything for the society. But I think a society worth having means we have to step up for this society. We have to do our job. That doesn't mean we have to go to the military. Please. Just not this. My beautiful wife, for example, she works in healthcare. This is really important. It's not well paid, but this is really important what she did there, and this is a community job, I think. And that would be a great opportunity for all of you, for all of the youngest one, to do this in one time of age, to get out of their bubble, to step up, to do something. And if it's not the best, maybe it's good for you, for your future development, from my point of view.
Same like you mentioned so much, but the challenge and the year for society is a very good opportunity for us all, and to give a piece back to our society. I think that's what you mentioned: equal women and men, military, healthcare, both. I think that's what we mentioned.
Yes.
So, bringing it back to policy.
Yeah.
How can we, or what would be the strategy for building joint units and providing for the common defense in the face of devolutionist parties, far-right parties that really want to become insular states rather than this multinational cooperation that has been the standard for the past 30 years?
I'm sorry, what do we have to build up for them?
So trying to build up military cooperation, providing for the common defense of Europe and of the democratic world in the face of what seems to be nations starting to become more isolated, especially with regards to the rise of the far-right parties in Poland and Hungary, and with Britain becoming more insular. How can we build up military cooperation when these ideologies that challenge the values of the EU are rising?
First of all, we still have NATO. Yeah, and for me, NATO is a partnership and alliance of values, but it is also a partnership of hard facts. This is the bodybuilder in the club. This is the strongest ever military alliance we have on this world, and this is not only an anchor for Germany or for the United States. This is, and from my opinion, this is the anchor for the world. We know there is someone who will protect the human rights. He or she or whatever the NATO is, I don't know from gender, maybe he because of his arms. But he will step up. He will do his job. Maybe that's also a parachute sometimes when you talk about European Union. Sometimes they just get the best of it and forgot or don't want to take part in European security because they know there will be a NATO parachute who's protecting them. But the answer is quite easy. First of all, you can't force anyone to anything. If Poland decides to do so, they have to do so with all the consequences. If the Brits stay or not or whatever, it's up to them. That's their political decision. It's the same with the United States and the same with Germany. We can do whatever we want. We are the states. But with all the consequences we have to face for that. And maybe it's up to us to promote the value of all these things. And for us as Germany, especially for us as Germany, multilateralism is the approach to do so, because that's the only way you can interfere with different perspectives in a collective and from our point of view, best way to deal with things. So, Chrissy?
Strengthening the European pillar under the umbrella of NATO. That's work together. That's an added value. We work together.
To continue on with your Brexit point we were just talking about, my question was more military related. What effect on the European defense would a Brexit have, do you think? Is the European defense ready for a full Brexit?
It depends. Social science, it depends. But on the one hand, it's a pity. It's really a pity. We are connected to the Brits. Why do they want to leave us? Yeah, it's like a sad relationship ending suddenly somehow, and we all, as everyone was shocked during this. I think the Brits are still shocked and still don't know what happened, really. But that's the but. On the other hand, the Brits always that we have this NATO umbrella. NATO is the military partnership we have, and the European Union is an economy partnership. And after that, just a few weeks after the Brits decided, oh, maybe we should go, we met without the Brits. The European Union met in Budapest, or in Prague, somewhere in the east of Europe, and they decided they want to work together closer. Because the Brits always stepped on the brake. They said, no, we have the NATO. We don't need a better pillar for that. After the Brits decided to leave, we strengthened our military cooperation. This PESCO, permanent structured cooperation. This is after the Brexit, after the decision that the British want to leave the European Union was the idea to strengthen that. So, from my perspective, for Europe or for European Union, for the military perspective, maybe we have more chances, or what we call, because hopes and fears, maybe there are more hopes than fears if the Brits leave. For the military, only for the military pillar. I want to go to London without a visa, but that's another part. Yeah.
Is there another hand over here? Okay, yeah. So let's go here first.
My question is more of a social or domestic issue. Like through America's history, there, depending on what's been going on, there have been different views on the military, either positive or negative. And it seems right now that most people have a generally high respect for veterans and people in the armed forces. Can you say the same about Germany? And if not, how can you make the relationship between the public and the military better?
You in the US, you are so proud of your soldiers. That's a very, very high difference to Germany. Our relationship between soldiers and the population is not so good like in the US. We are accepted, but it's not that anyone say to us, thank you for your service. It's, and to be here, a soldier is very, very comfortable for us. It's in Germany, it's the other relationship because of our history. That's the reason.
Do you see a way that it could become better?
It's not. Maybe we can explain that. From my point of view, it's not bad. It's different. Maybe I give you a quote for that. I looked it up. There's a quote, a German quote, but I translated it. The army is the noblest institution in every country because it alone allows the existence and the fall of all other facilities, all political and civilian liberty, all creations of culture and finances stand and fall within the army. Where's this quote from? Any idea? It's Bismarck. It's a German quote. But it's old. It's over 100 years old. We lost 2 wars during that. And not just losing a war, which is part of the game somehow, we also lose the Second World War morally. The armed forces were part of the genocide. That's a huge step. And then 10 years after the end of the Second World War, we have an army again. But what kind of army? How we do control that? And that's the reason why there is a different approach. There's a different way of talking and looking at soldiers. But it's not bad. The Germans are still proud of their army somehow, but not with flags and not with thank you for your service, by paying taxes. That's the German way. I know it's not so sexy, but it's the German way. Yeah, just paying taxes for the military and voting for parties who use the military and be some kind of interested in that, what we do. Yeah. So there is no need to step up anyhow. Yeah.
So the U.S. is basically saying that they're going to be pulling troops out of Europe, and they have been doing it for quite a while. So there's the security question of how do you defend Europe if there happens to be a land war, which I don't think they do because mad. But there's a talk of like creating a European army with all the countries like contributing troops like outside of NATO. What would Germany's role in that be, given the history and kind of reluctance of other countries to let Germany have a strong
I just got a quote for that. No, it's really a good quote, so we can pick that up. It's from Lord Hastings. He was the first Secretary General of the NATO, and he said the main purpose of the NATO is keep the Soviet Union out, keep the Americans in, and keep the Germans down. So, now to your question. If there is a European army, what to do? We are the biggest economy. We have one of the biggest armed forces within Europe. So we will have a leading role somehow, somewhere, somehow. But, and that's maybe a good way of dealing with that, the European Union is not about leadership, it's about equalness, working together as equals, and that's the same for all the military units we have. Working together as equals. We have these German-France Corps, the Germans and French soldiers working together, German and Netherlands Corps working together, German, Danish, Polish Corps working together. That's the European approach. So if there will be in a far future really a European army, there will be no leader of this army. Then it will be the army of the Europeans. Just the Europeans, the United States of Europe, maybe, if you call them somehow. Maybe it leads in this way. Yeah, so maybe that answers your questions. Yeah. Sir? Yeah.
Looking at the poster, I see the word firewall, and I think of cybersecurity, and that isn't really thought of when you look at the Army. You think of the physical defense. Do you have anything to say about the future or the current activities of the German military with cybersecurity, and perhaps with NATO or America?
Okay, I take in, because these colors are from... we did a huge step. We had the Army, we had the Navy, we had the Air Force. Bless you. We had the Navy, and we had some supportive units, and we have the doctors. And after 2015, we have cyber information space as a special selected kind of these, we call them Organisationsbereiche, org parts, org units. So a new and huge part of the armed forces is cybersecurity. We just use units we already had. The PsyOps unit just switched from supportive to the cyber information room. All the cable signal guys, most of the signal guys just switched to there. But this will be the future of warfare. Yeah, we talked about hybrid warfare earlier. Yeah, we will have these double approach. We will have attacks on our infrastructure. Just imagine cutting down all the internet in Gainesville for today and for tomorrow. Yeah. You all rely on all the kind of information you get from the internet. If there's no information, you will eat my information I will provide to you and think it's true. So that's the first step, and maybe all the other steps. If you can't buy a nuclear bomb from eBay, just hack a nuclear power plant and then you have it. It's not that easy, hopefully. But you know what I mean. This is the future of warfare, and so that's the reason why Germany stepped up. And we did it, of course, we did it together with our American alliance. We have a huge center in Estonia. It's really the eastern part of Europe. There we have a center for security, center for internet security, or for cyber security, and their German armed forces are there, stationed permanently in this. So that's the idea. Yeah. So yes, sir.
Does Germany support a United States Space Force? Familiar with Donald Trump's?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a question I will hand to my lieutenant colonel, because he's the one who knows about that. I don't know anything about Space Force. So, sir, the mic.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks for the question. I was sitting in the talks in the Pentagon when they introduced the Space Force as well, and aware what is behind the concept of the Space Force, and also being aware of the discussions that have been done within the Air Force, and this is sometimes not 100% in line what other people think, what the administration had in mind or has in mind. So, but this got straightened out, and now the plan is there. Basically, there was no influence from the German side on the plans of the Space Force, obviously. Therefore, well, we are too small. We have capabilities in space, obviously. We use capabilities in space as German armed forces, but we don't contribute a lot to that. So ideas, some, yes, but it's not a place to judge the American forces on how to integrate a space force. I know the ideas, and there are still problems I see when it comes to operationalizing the Space Force and executing missions and integrating Space Force in a cross-domain, multi-domain environment, like executing the operation itself, planning the operation, executing the operation. Because every branch will have to have access to space capabilities, Space Force, and you now have to make sure that everybody actually gets to that point and can access this. So, and there's still some questions, I think, that are being worked on by the Air Force, by the Department of the Air Force, though. So, but yeah, we'll not criticize it, nor be able to shape it in any way.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Sure.
Actually, we have been here for an hour, and we've entertained, you all have entertained numerous questions. And so at this point, I think what I'd like to do is thank all of you for coming, but I would like to thank our guests for coming today. We hope we can continue these kinds of discussions. I think they're very important as things go forward. So thank you all very much for coming.